Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my Wine and Design podcast. My name is Megan. If you have not been here before, thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited today to talk about how to deal with difficult graphic design clients. So if you have not been here before, or maybe this is your first time listening to this podcast, welcome. I like to talk about graphic design because this is my second year being a full-time graphic designer, business owner. I absolutely love it. I would not trade it for the world. I'm so happy doing that. But I think it's really important to touch on the things that can be hard in this world of graphic design and being a business owner. And it's definitely not always sunshine and rainbows. And I think it's really hard. I was just thinking about this today with social media. It's really hard to see those moments and days where it can be really difficult, or in particular, the clients that can be really difficult. And I think that it's a common thing that happens, especially when you're like a service provider or frankly any business owner. You're always gonna, I feel like you can't make everybody happy, and sometimes it's just not a good fit. Sometimes it's just you guys won't mesh, and that's totally okay. I don't think it's either person's fault. So I really wanted to touch on that today in this video and bring shed some light on the fact that not everything has to be perfect. If you're currently going through a client issue, or maybe you're just super unhappy with the client you're working with or the project, it's okay. That can happen. And I truly feel like those types of things that happen can help you learn what to look out for in the future. So it's never a failure. You can always learn something from every single client. So just push through. You got this. And I really hope that this episode kind of helps you navigate situations like that. Okay, so I have 6 different particular tips that I'm going to go through, and I'll share some stories in between of clients I've had in the past that have been a little tricky. I'll probably dedicate some episodes to those particular stories because some of them are a little crazy. But honestly, I work with lots of amazing clients. It's really rare that there's a difficult one, especially nowadays, because I know like the red flags to look for. I also know I just have some boundaries now in my business that help me not work with someone that might not be a good fit. So I'm going to give you guys 6 different tips on kind of how to navigate a difficult client in that situation. So number 1 is to listen to them and try your best to hear them out. I know it can be really hard when a client isn't liking what you design, or maybe they're just not happy with anything you're delivering them, and that can be kind of seen as a difficult client. But just try and hear them out, try and listen to them, and do your best to give them what it is that they're looking for. I feel like there's certain types of clients. There's clients that'll come to you and want you to do completely, like you have complete creative freedom to do whatever it is you want. And then there's clients who have a specific thing that they want and a specific vision. And then sometimes there's clients that don't even know how to explain what they want, but they don't like anything you're creating. Trust me, there's all types of clients. But if you're dealing with someone that just doesn't like anything you're creating, my biggest suggestion would to start by really trying to hear them out and listen, and create space for them to talk to you about it. I've had clients where maybe it's really hard for them to email their feedback, or it's hard for them to like explain it over writing, and they're just better at talking on the phone. So if you're in that situation, I would just send them a link to book a call with you and get on a phone call, because honestly too, it's really hard to read how they're feeling over email. And if you're getting like a feeling that they're not happy, you can really tell that when you get on a call. So I would just do that, hear them out, listen to them as much as you can. And if you're kind of stuck on like what to ask them when you're on that call, I would just ask them what they do and what they don't like, and write as many notes as you can, or record the meeting. That way you can like reference that when you start to design. And I know that like as creatives, it can be really hard to like throw out all the ideas you have, put them all out there, and to kind of have to go work backwards and recreate it. It can be really tricky, like creatively in your head, to like create a whole new idea and a whole new thing. So I would step away from the project, just let them know, listen to them, and just let them know like the steps you're going to take to make it better. If you feel like listening to them and offering those solutions are going to help it. But I truly do feel that getting on a call and just having like open ears to hear their concerns can really help solve a lot of problems. Second tip that I have is communication. This goes with anything, friendships, relationships, and clients also. So make sure that you're communicating everything and anything. I have learned this the hard way. I think that I used to like overpromise and possibly underdeliver, which would result in maybe an unhappy client. And I had to learn that lesson really quickly, that I have to communicate how long it's going to take me. If they do have a revision, I need to communicate to them how long that revision is going to take. And don't be afraid to tell them, because at the end of the day, your clients are going to be happy if you just openly share with them how difficult something is, or how possible something is, or how long it'll take. They're already your clients, so they already love your work. They want to work with you. But if you don't have communication, that can really lead to a lot of issues. So make sure that you're telling them everything, down to what it is you're working on, during which weeks, which days. I feel that having like amazing open communication about everything, my clients are way more understanding if like something comes up or if something needs to take a little longer. As long as you communicate it, they're not going to be that unhappy. And if they are unhappy, then they might just be a really difficult client, and I'll get to the next steps. But I did have a client this week actually where I was working on her logo. And it's funny because like the creative process, sometimes I'm like, there's certain days where I'm like not in the mood to design, which is typically Mondays. And then there's also certain days where I just cannot stop coming up with ideas. So the other day, actually this week, I was working on my client's logo, but I just didn't want to send her it yet because I had another really good idea that I wanted to bring to life. So I just emailed her that. I let her know that I was 2 days late on sending the logo over, but I wanted to put all my ideas out there for her to see. And honestly, guys, they're going to understand that. It's like creativity and art takes time, and as long as you communicate it, there should be no issue. So along with that, within the communication tip that I have is to also communicate what it is that you designed. I think that a lot of times we send a design over and we expect the client to know why we decided to choose these colors or why we decided to choose the placement. But a lot of times there is a reason, and I think it's easy for this to become like second nature, like if you're creative or if you're an artist. But I would really try to communicate to your clients why you chose the specific design styles and why you're doing it this way. I think that's the best way for clients to kind of make a decision on what concept they like. But if they have no idea why you added like a little symbol and like what the meaning is behind that, then they're really not going to have any idea what these ideas are even about or for. And especially like when I'm creating logos, I like to include like little personal touches from the client. Like I'm speaking of this client again this week, but I made a logo for her and I added a flower in there that symbolizes connection and friendships and stuff, and I wanted to make sure that I explain that to her so that she knows like why I chose that design choice. So make sure that you're not only communicating with like the timeline of things, but that you're also communicating why you're designing what you're designing. Okay, third tip is to document everything. I think that this is kind of just to cover your butt, and it's kind of just a business practice to make sure that you're documenting everything and that you have like a specific communication style or communication place. If you have everything everywhere, it can get really messy, and it can be really hard if issues do come up to reference what it is that you're talking about. So I would just make sure that you have those email threads going and that you're communicating on there, and also documenting everything through a task board or having them sign a contract and sending them a copy of it so they can reference it. And also just documenting any, like if your clients are expressing concerns, then you really should make sure that you're documenting everything and showing them that you're coming up with solutions and making sure that you're doing all that, because unfortunately, if it does go too far and if the client's just not happy at all, maybe they're requesting refunds or whatever it is, you want to make sure that you have some sort of documentation to cover yourself, to know that you did what you could, that maybe they just don't like your style, which is okay. And just making sure that you have all of that in writing can really help. And also, if the client does decide, if you guys decide to part ways, I do think it's important to have it in writing that the project is now closed. That way they can't come back and like ask for something like that or something more. So I would just make sure to document everything and anything possible. And that's kind of why I like to communicate with most of my clients over email. I do like to get on calls for like any sort of revisions or whatever it is that they want to talk about. But a lot of times it's nice to have things in email and in writing. So I would definitely keep that in mind too. Okay, my next tip is to set boundaries in your business. This is one that I'm currently working on. I was so frustrated this week because I felt like, and these are potential clients, these are new clients, but I felt like my time wasn't respected this week. And it really hit me that I need to set boundaries and I need to express to these potential clients that that kind of thing doesn't slide with me. And maybe that's just my red flag that it's not a good fit. But having boundaries in your business can really, really help save you and save your client from being disappointed if you're not fulfilling all the needs that they want. So when I say boundaries, this means setting boundaries when it comes to not showing up to calls, or setting boundaries when it comes to project scope changes. If they add more things on and they're expecting you to do that within this project, make sure that you're communicating to them that's a completely different project, which requires a completely different sub-agreement and proposal. Communicating that. This all comes down to communication, guys. That number 2 point is so important, but make sure that you have those boundaries in place because you don't want to get taken advantage of. And unfortunately, like I had to learn this the hard way a few years ago, but favors are not really like appreciated in business. So stop giving favors, set the boundaries for yourself, and make sure that you're communicating with your clients that this requires additional cost or that they're past their revision limits. Communicate that you added a late fee on for them missing a call or missing a payment. Just communicate all that, and also have those boundaries set in your business so that you know how to approach it when things like that happen, because there should be consequences. I mean, if you had like a eyebrow appointment set up and you didn't show up, you're most likely going to get a late fee or you're going to get a no-show fee. So just making sure that you have those boundaries can help you, and also will most likely have the client respect you a little more, which is kind of like crazy to say. But I feel like when you have such freedom with the way that you're doing business and the things that you're giving them, that's when things can start to get tricky, and where they might think that this is just favors instead of compensating you for your time. So make sure to set your boundaries. Okay, my next tip is to offer solutions. This is kind of client by client based, depending on what it is that their concern is. But after you've listened to them, you've communicated with them, you've let them know that like extra revisions might be extra money, then I would just offer them the solution. I would offer them to either create logos for them, another concept for them, maybe complimentary if you are willing to do that, just like one more concept. And then after that, you can set the boundary of like, if you want more revisions after this one, it will be additional cost. Offer them some solutions. Kind of think to yourself, what can I do to not stress me out, but that I can also do to make my client happy? And if you have a solution idea in your head and you send it over to them, personally, that's what I would do. I would offer one last solution that I have, just to kind of see if we can get on the same page with things. But you know, sometimes no matter what you do, no matter how much you communicate, no matter how much you let them know that you want to make it right, sometimes a client just might not be happy. So that brings me to my last point, to know when to walk away. It's a really hard decision to make. And if you're anything like me, when I have a client that's unhappy, I typically blame myself for a while, and it eats me alive. Like I want to make it right for my client, and I want them to I want them to be happy, because I know that every client that walks through the door, they're investing a good amount of money, and I want that investment to be so worth it to them that they're going to want to share my name with others. I have had a few clients in the past where I've had to walk away, and basically what it comes down to is, after all of those tips I just gave, they're still not happy. They're still arguing, or maybe they're not respecting my boundaries, or maybe they're not paying me. Those types of things are typically when I decide to walk away. So I would set those boundaries. Once you set those boundaries, you're going to know that once that's crossed in your business, and once you feel like you're not getting the respect you need, or maybe you're just feeling like no matter what you do, your client will not be happy, then it's okay to walk away. And make sure that this is in your contract. Make sure that you have something written in there that if either party is unhappy, they can walk away. And then in my contract, I have something that says like a certain amount of payment is due, and I'm the one who determines like what it is that they owe me. So I would make sure that you have something like that written out. I don't know the actual way I wrote that, but it is in my contract on my website. But make sure that you cover yourself there. And also, like, I know it can be really, really hard, but for your own mental peace and for your own client to go continue on their journey of finding the right designer, sometimes that's the only thing that'll work. So those are my suggestions of how to deal with difficult clients. But I wanted to share an example story with you guys, because I think the best way to relate to someone is to kind of share like your own experiences. So I have had quite a few difficult clients in my experience. I mean, I've been designing for clients for like 7 years now, so it's just kind of inevitable that in the beginning, you're not really going to know what to look for, and you might come across this. So one of the ones that comes to mind is a client of mine that she was amazing. Like, I was super excited to work with her, and we got into the designing part, and I typically will send over a mock-up of the website before I even build it out, specifically so I can get all the feedback from my client and make sure that they're happy with it before I go and make it functional. And I sent this over to my client, but she decided to show everybody in her family, everybody that she knows, the website, which, if you guys know how that feels, it's like too many cooks in the kitchen, too many opinions, and it's just going to lead to like ultimate confusion for the client, and it's going to make them lose sight of their vision and what they want because they're hearing all these opinions. So that's kind of a hard thing to judge, just meeting the client and like not knowing that they're going to do that in the future. But yeah, she got a lot of opinions, which was confusing because it kind of changed the whole trajectory of like the vision that we had. So I did create multiple revisions and concepts, and I did all that and I sent them over. But after like the 4th round of trying to make it right, she just wasn't happy, and I could tell just like on the calls, we just weren't aligning anymore. And I don't know if it's because like the opinions that she got or what it was, but I tried everything and anything to make it look how she wanted. And then I made mistakes of doing a lot of extra credit and like extra favors on my behalf for her website. And I added in really interesting like plugins. I made it like really awesome. And I tried my best to like make it right and at least function right for her. Like the design part, it's super important, but for the website, I wanted it to perform well and function well. So I went above and beyond when building it out. And that's another mistake I made. I didn't really get full approval on the design parts before building it, but I knew that we were reaching our timeline. So I wanted to start like putting it together, and I figured like we can change photos and stuff later. So I built it out and tried my best to make it right. And then in between all that time, there was a few calls that were missed, and I could just tell that like the paths like weren't aligning anymore. So unfortunately, it was like a Sunday night, and I got an email that just let me know that this isn't what she wanted and that she decided to like stop. And sadly, that was before a couple of my payments that I needed. So it was a really unfortunate situation, and I really try to be like super understanding with clients if they're not happy, and I will do what I need to do to make it right. But there was also something that happened in between where I received like a 20-page Google Doc with like all the changes and all the additions, which honestly was like a whole nother website. So I requested additional costs, and I don't know if maybe that's what caused the misalignment, but that's when I knew it was time to walk away. But actually she decided it was time to walk away, but I was really on that cusp of sending that email and letting her know that this like isn't working. So I received that email, and it was sad, like I worked so hard for months on this website and this branding and everything. So to see like, to just like have something and throw it away is like so just heartbreaking. Like I wanted to see this through and wanted to make it work, but I responded back and I just said like, I'm super sorry that like you're not happy with it. Like, let me know if there's anything I can do to make it right. Or if you need anything from me, like let me know. And I never got a response. So it was really, really hard and really sad. But at the same time, in my gut, I knew that we weren't aligning anymore. So it was kind of like a blessing in disguise, because I feel like I had a lot of mental like stress and pressure to like make it how she wants. And yeah, honestly, sometimes it's just not a good fit. So that was kind of a more recent one that happened that was difficult to navigate. But at the same time, like I knew that she just needed to go find someone that would do exactly what she wanted. Or maybe she just needed more time to like sit with her ideas and envision what exactly it is that she needs. So yeah, sometimes it's not your fault as a designer. Like you can do everything and anything that you can, but sometimes it's just not going to work, and that's okay. So I've had to remind myself that, like, to not beat myself up, to not think it's my design skills or anything. Sometimes it's just not what they want or what they need, or maybe they don't know what they need. Maybe it just was the timing of like how this all worked. So that's why I think it's so important, if you are a client and you're looking into like hiring a designer, to make sure that you know what it is that you want before you go down this journey or this path, because it's going to be really hard like in the middle of a project to completely change your vision. So I would sit with your vision before reaching out, and that can make it go much easier. So those are my tips on how to deal with difficult clients. I totally understand how hard these situations can be, but you got it. Don't let it get your confidence down. Sometimes it's just not a good fit, and that's okay. There's always going to be another client, and it's okay. Like I have to stop beating myself up. I have to remind myself to stop beating myself up over it if there is a situation like that. But also, like I mentioned, there's so many red flags that you can look for, or not even red flags, maybe just like talking to the client and understanding like their vision and their timing and like where they're at mentally with their business. And that's why I like to get on like discovery calls to ask them all those questions. It really helps. And if you guys want me to make an episode about the red flags that I kind of look for, or those questions that I do ask, let me know and I can do that. But I really hope that this was helpful to you. And if you're in a situation like this, I'm sorry, you got this. Just stick through it and stay strong. It'll get better. I promise it'll get better. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did, I would appreciate it so much if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, if you're listening on here, or if you follow me on Spotify, where I also post these podcasts. But thank you guys so much, and I will see you in my next one.